Hi everybody, goal for today's video is to show you how to use variables to smooth out your character movement, and this can be used in a variety of contexts. The demo that I'm going to give you here today is going to use the left and right keys on the keyboard and get him to start moving slower, and then the more you hold the button, the more he'll speed up. And if you go from moving to the right to moving back to the left, he'll have to slow down to kind of get back to stopped and then continue moving to the left. And we'll also use that to make objects like walls solid, so that if you're running into it, you stop and don't get halfway into the wall, because that seems crazy. So the goal for using some variables here, I'm going to start on the variables tab here by making a variable called xSpeed. And this is going to be for my dude character only. We're going to leave displaying it on, so we'll keep the checkbox for just a sec. And the way that this is going to be handled is with some if statements. So let's use the if statement out of the control tab. And we're going to use the keys on the keyboard. And I'm going to start with the if right arrow is pressed. And I want one of these for the left arrow as well. So in this video, I'm going to focus on the x-axis left and right motion here. If you want to do the same for the y-axis, it's essentially the same strategy. You're going to have another copy of this. So when we start out, let's have our character totally stopped. So we're going to set his x speed to 0. If the right arrow is pressed, then let's change it and increase it by 1. If the left arrow is pressed, remember that's the negative x-axis, so we're going to change it by -1. And after you've got your speed, then let's change our x location by however much is in that speed variable. So let's have a look at what this looks like. So as I hold down the left and right keys, notice how he gets some speed to it. He's moving a little faster than I would kind of like, though. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add a limiter to it. So we're going to say, hey, we're only going to allow you to move a certain speed. And if you try to exceed that, then we're going to have a limit for it. So let's make another variable called max speed. Again, this is going to be just for my dude, so this sprite only. And I'm going to set my max speed. I'm going to start with 5 here and see what that looks like. Now we need to add some if statements here to make sure that the x speed doesn't ever go larger than this max speed variable here. You could type in the 5s in each of the locations coming up here, but by using a variable, it's going to make it nice and easy to make adjustments to how fast he can go without having to root around through a whole bunch of spots in our code. So let's now use an if statement. After you've increased the speed by 1, let's make sure that it never exceeds that. So if the x speed is larger than the max that I want, then let's set the x speed just to the max. So what this says basically, like, if the speed gets increased to 6, then let's set it back to 5. And we're going to do the same thing with the left key here. But we need to keep track of the negatives. So what we're going to be checking is if the x speed gets smaller than -5. So let's grab another if statement here. And less than. But the problem here is if I just check if the x speed is smaller than the max speed here, my x speed of like -4 or -5, whatever, is always going to be smaller than +5. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the x, or the max speed, and I'm going to multiply it by -1. And that way, if the x speed ever gets less than -5, now I know that I'm trying to go too fast in the left direction. And now we're going to set our x speed to be -1 times the max speed. So in this case, -5. Let's try that. And I'm pretty happy with that. So he never gets rocketing around too crazy. The next thing that I want to add to this, though, is what if I'm not pushing either the left arrow or the right arrow? So if I'm not trying to actively run, let's have him slow down. So the way that we're going to do this is with another if statement. And the one that I'm going to use here is the if something else something. So what we're going to do here is this movement code that's changing my speed part, this part I'm going to put into the if. So I'm going to have either the left arrow or the right arrows being pushed be the first part of this. And then the else part means I'm not pushing either left or right. So let's set this up as the following. Let's grab an or, and then it's going to be I'm pushing either the right arrow or I'm pushing the left arrow. And now this movement code goes into the if. And now I've got a part where I can put some code for if I'm not pushing either left or right. And now inside of this, one of two things can happen. If the x speed is positive, meaning I'm walking to the right, I want to decrease the speed to slow him back down to a speed of 0. So let's grab an if, and now let's use the greater than symbol. If my speed is positive, which is greater than 0, now I want to decrease it. So let's change the speed. Oh, not a set, let's change it. Change the x speed by -1. And the opposite of this as well. So if the x speed is less than 0, these are your negative numbers. So let's change the x speed by +1. And let's try this. So as I let go of the key, notice how he's got a nice kind of slow down to him. And if I immediately jump to the other key, he's going to start accelerating the other way. But as soon as I let go, now he's no longer moving. The next piece of this that we want to do here is let's do a collision with the wall. So basically what's going to happen is we're going to keep track of where my guy is, keeping track of the old location. And we're going to do that right before we change our x coordinate. So let's make another variable here, and I'm going to call this previous x. So this is going to be my old location before I moved. And right before we make a movement, let's set my previous x to be the X position. So I'm basically writing down in this previous X, where were you before you tried to move? And now after you make a movement, let's check if you're touching the wall. So let's use sensing, and let's see if you're touching a wall. The first thing that we want to do here is we want to stop him from actually entering the wall. So we're basically going to undo that change X by X speed. So let's set the X location to be whatever it was before we got halfway into the wall. And because we're now clunking into a wall, let's just set our speed to 0 so that we've stopped moving around. And let's have him get a headache here. So let's have him say, ouch. And let's give him a color effect. And let's give this a try. So we can move around left and right. I'm going to get a nice run of speed. Bang. Ouch. And now I can start moving again, and I get an ouch. I think it would be good, though, if we clear off the color once we're done. So as soon as we are done with this ouch message here, let's set the color effect back to 0. And that's going to be our indication that as soon as the ouch is done, we return to our normal colors and you can start moving around again. Hope you find this useful. The goal of this is to show you how to use variables here. Again, if you want to do up, down, left, and right, then it's basically going to be a second copy of all of this sort of stuff. So you can use the duplicate functionality by right-clicking. And you're probably going to have to make some more variables for previous Y and Y speed as well.